Donald Trump is back in the Oval Office, making waves with executive orders, controversial policies, and bold promises to reshape America, from pardoning Capitol rioters to renaming the Gulf of Mexico. His second term is sparking heated debates. Is this the restoration of America, or the start of deeper division?
Way for making bold moves.
Right at the gate, he declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, sending troops, pushing for the wall, ending catch and release. He even wants to label drug cartels as terrorist organizations. I mean, that seems pretty extreme, doesn't it?
It's a significant escalation, no doubt. While past presidents have used the military to support border security, labeling cartels as terrorists opens up a whole new set of possibilities. And then there's the attempt to end birthright citizenship.
Yeah, that's the one where anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically a citizen, right?
Exactly. It's been a cornerstone of American citizenship since the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. To change it would require either a new constitutional amendment or a Supreme Court ruling that reinterprets the existing amendment, both incredibly difficult paths.
So basically, Trump is setting up a huge legal battle, and the outcome could have major implications for generations to come.
Absolutely. It's a move that goes straight to the heart of what it means to be American. And speaking of consequences, let's shift gears to the economy. Trump's declared a national energy emergency and is pushing full steam ahead on domestic energy production. Drill, baby, drill is back.
Yeah, he's been all over the news talking about ending wind farm leases and pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. It seems like he's making a hard pivot away from renewable energy.
It's certainly a dramatic shift. While his supporters argue that this will lead to energy independence and lower costs, critics are worried about the environmental impact. Pulling out of the Paris Agreement, for example, isolates the U.S. on the global stage when it comes to climate change.
And he's slapping tariffs on all sorts of goods coming in from other countries, right?
That's right. The tariffs are a key part of his America First economic strategy, which aims to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. However, some economists argue that this protectionist approach could backfire, leading to trade wars and ultimately hurting American consumers with higher prices.
So it's a gamble, basically. He's betting that these moves will boost the American economy in the long run, but there's a chance it could make things worse.
Precisely. It's a high-stakes game with potentially far-reaching consequences. And the economy isn't the only area where Trump is shaking things up. The culture wars are heating up as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that. He's completely scrapped all those diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, right?
That's correct. He's replaced them with a focus on what he calls a merit-based and colorblind approach. It's a move that has ignited fierce debate. And speaking of things that speak volumes, let's address the elephant in the room. The pardons. Trump pardoned 1,500 people involved in the January 6th Capitol riots.
I was wondering we were going to get to that. It's been the biggest story of his second term so far.
It's certainly generated a lot of controversy. On one hand, you have families celebrating the release of their loved ones, whom they see as patriots who were unjustly imprisoned. On the other hand, you have critics, including many legal scholars and politicians, who argue that these pardons undermine the rule of law and send a dangerous message that violence against the government can be tolerated.
Yeah, I remember Nancy Pelosi saying it was a slap in the face of democracy. It's hard to overstate how divisive this decision has been.
It really highlights the deep political and ideological divides in the country. To some, these pardons represent a victory for freedom and a rejection of what they see as a politically motivated prosecution. To others, it's a dangerous erosion of democratic norms and a sign that justice is no longer blind.
Wow, so we've got a situation where people are looking at the exact same event and coming to completely opposite conclusions. That doesn't bode well for finding common ground or having any kind of productive dialogue.
It's a troubling sign of how polarized American society has become. And this polarization extends beyond domestic issues. Trump's actions on the global stage are also sending shockwaves through the international community.
Okay, let's talk about that. He pulled the U.S. out of the World Health Organization, and he's been pretty critical of China's role in the Panama Canal. Is this all part of his America First approach to foreign policy?
It certainly seems to fit that pattern. He's also been putting pressure on NATO allies to increase their defense spending and using tariffs as leverage in trade negotiations. These actions signal a shift away from multilateralism and a greater emphasis on bilateral agreements that directly benefit the United States.
So less cooperation, more competition. It sounds like he's taking a pretty hard line with other countries.
He is, and his rhetoric towards countries like Venezuela, North Korea, and Ukraine has been, shall we say, assertive. This creates a climate of uncertainty and makes it difficult for other countries to anticipate America's actions on the global stage.
Okay, I have to ask this. In his inauguration speech, he said he was saved by God to lead America. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement, even for Trump.
It was a statement that deeply resonated with his evangelical base, reinforcing their belief that he is a divinely chosen leader. However, it also raised concerns among those who see it as blurring the lines between church and state, and potentially fueling a rise in religious nationalism.
So how do we make sense of all of this? Is this second Trump term a restoration of America, as his supporters claim? Or is it a recipe for further division and turmoil?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll be grappling with for years to come.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. Where do we go from here?
I think the key lies in how these policies play out in the real world, how they impact people's lives, the economy, and America's role on the global stage.
We're only a few weeks into the second term, and already it feels like a whirlwind of activity. It's going to be fascinating and maybe a little terrifying to see what happens next.
What we're seeing now are the early tremors of what could be a seismic shift in American politics and society. It's almost as if the guardrails that have traditionally constrained presidential power are being tested in ways we haven't seen in modern history. But there are some red flags to watch out for, like the concentration of power in the executive branch, attacks on the free press, and a disregard for the rule of law.
And we've seen some of those things already, haven't we? I mean, Trump's been pretty critical of the media. And his pardons for the January 6th rioters definitely raised questions about his respect for the legal system.
Those are valid concerns. And it's important to remember that democracies are fragile. They rely on a shared set of norms and institutions that, if weakened or undermined, can lead to instability and even collapse.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically that these trends continue.
And these concerns are amplified when we consider the global implications of Trump's actions. His withdrawal from the World Health Organization, for example, has raised concerns about America's commitment to global health and its willingness to cooperate with international organizations.
And the tariffs he's imposed on goods from China and other countries, are those starting to have a real impact on the economy?
They are. While some businesses have benefited from the tariffs, many others are struggling with increased costs and supply chain disruptions. And these costs are often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices.
So it's a mixed bag.